with no further ado, let's get into it and have a good evening. So basically, we'll start with karakia. So here we go. So, e te atua, kia tata mai, koe ki wainga e tō iwi. Manaki te mato ki te mau i te rongo, kia uhoki ki te pai. Ki te atua, te ake kia kore, ai mato e hinga ki te he. Ko koe, te oranga nako, moku ma mautu katoa, e te nei. Ko ihu kara iti, hoki tamato ariki, amene.
Amene.
Kia ora. Kia ora. Okay, so as I said, we'll quickly do a whip round now. Vern's going to be watching for questions. If there's any out there of you that are so shy, you don't want to put your hands up and ask a question, flick a message through and we'll chip it in for you, because once these two go at it, we're just going to have to pull the handbrake on and throw it at them. But the idea is to get as much engagement from you out there. So basically that. But, you know, before we start, one of the things I was saying to the guys before Craig turned up, one of the first people I ever mentored here and when I started advisory in 2017 was a former SAS soldier, and he was on the Wili Apiata tour where the Hummer got flipped. Anyway, post-traumatic stress disorder, huge in military, and one of the things that I saw with him was that, you know, with the military guys, the scars are as deep on the inside as they are on the outside. And I was using that in thinking today before we came in and did this, the PTSD is almost like there's a pandemic traumatic stress disorder for small businesses, that there's anxiety to own a small business anyway. And, you know, you've got your house on the line with the bank, you've got a staff, there's got people falling sick, and you're trying to hold everything together. So every day you've just got this kind of like above you, the pressure. But then a pandemic comes along and flips base over apex. And I think that one of these things is somehow, you know, we're holding on and we're using the best of our resilience. But I think that the key thing is that this robust kōrero that we've got going with each other is something that it's a healing thing. It's really important that we do that we just keep talking to each other, because one of the things that John said to me when they were out on a lot of their stuff, that they couldn't talk to each other. This is in the military thing, and their signal to each other if they were okay was just a wink, and you knew if your mate didn't wink at you that something was right, because he didn't have the energy to wink. And that's the thing in small businesses, keeping that eye on each other, and you know, right where we're at now. So, you know, without too much pressure, going to throw it at Craig first, and he's got something to share with us. Over to Tuari, and then we've got curly questions to flick at you. So you have a crack, Craig. Looking forward to hearing your stuff.
Kia ora, Vaughan. Kia tātou, everyone. Thank you for the privilege of being able to spend a little bit of time and have a kōrero with you around something that I'm pretty passionate about, around the well-being, but also how to run a good business, because I think to do both, it has to be intertwined. But I thought I'd share a little bit of the personal journey of how I've got to where I am today and why I'm so passionate about it. So for those of you that don't know, my previous life, I had a couple of rugby boots chucked over my shoulder. Fortunate enough to be able to represent NZ and travel around the world as a young kid, 18, 19-year-old. But my rugby career came to an abrupt end when I was 23, when I caught a virus that attacked my heart and basically stopped me in my tracks. But I had no qualifications, no nothing to fall back on at all, because everything was all about rugby. I failed school C, had nothing. I only went to school to eat my lunch pretty much, and maybe chase girls occasionally. But the thought of having to sort myself after rugby was never there, ever. So coming home sick, relying on my now wife to be able to provide for us as a beginning school teacher, landing in Glenfield, going from the glitzy life in Cardiff, where you're treated like a rock star, VIP bars, to nothing wrong with Glenfield, but it was a little bit different to what I was kind of used to, and how that hit the ego a little bit and hit the identity of who I was. And when I took rugby away, that was who I thought I was. And it took me 18 months to be able to get back on my feet. My first job was part-time swim coach down in towards Devonport. That kind of got me back into getting a wage and starting at the bottom. But fast track a couple of years, I landed a sales job where the culture was shit. And I had gone from knowing what a good culture looked like in some of the rugby teams, had one example where it was really bad. But the organization that I landed on was kind of ruthless. Inexperienced leaders that lead with fear, small business trying to break into something, playing each other off against each other, and without any regard for the person or the individual that was behind maybe some of the numbers. It got pretty bad for me mentally. I was performing incredibly well though, where the bosses were like, well, why can't everybody be more like Craig? Yet I was falling apart when I'd get home, because you can hold your shit together in that environment, but then you're exhausted and you let things go when you're in a safe place, and that safe place was at home, which wasn't very pleasant for my wife, with 2 young kids, and basically got forced to realize that something was up. So went to the doctor. As they did back then, they just wrote a script for a bit of medication, and can remember my wife asking the doctor at the time, what else can I be doing? And her advice is just hold on, he might come back. And it was a tough journey. I missed the first year of my second oldest child's life because I was on medication, quite strong medication, zombied out. And almost to this day, I kind of feel like I'm making up for that a little bit now because of having missed that year. But had to leave that business. My wife made me. It was bad for our marriage. It was bad for me. But fortunate enough to land in a family-owned business called McFall Fuel, which is based out of Te Awamutu. And they had a branch over in Mount Maunganui where the family had moved to because one of the sons had been in an accident and been a tetraplegic and needed to move away from the country air to the beach air. I was fortunate enough to land there, and over the course of 6 months, Alan McFall, the owner of that business, started opening up with me around some of the struggles that he was going through, whether it be with his body, a little bit of stuff that was happening at home, just building that psychological safety where I could start removing a little bit of the mask, where I could trust him and talk a little bit more around what was going on with me. Talked through that I was on medication in the end, and he had a bit of a kōrero with me and sat down and said, Craig, I see something in you. The business can get more out of you, so I want to put something in place for you, which is put some business coaching together, and he'll pay for it. And it just happened to be that the person he put me in front of was one of the best clinical psychologists in Tauranga. And over the course of the next 12 months, I was able to build a pretty solid toolkit, an understanding of who I was more, because I was faking it so much I'd forgot who I was, because I could effectively mirror and interact and be whoever you want me to be, depending on the situation, because that's what sales is, right? Trying to find that common ground in the rapport. But that 12 months of working with somebody, with a professional, and opening up and figuring out who I was, what my triggers were, things that I needed to avoid, and what things I could put in place to be able to make sure that I stayed on an even keel, was imperative to who I am today. And effectively, that's what I wanted to put in place when I came back in a large organization in Xero. I stayed with that business for six and a half years. I resigned and moved to the UK, where I started with Xero just over 7 years ago. When I moved home 5 years ago to take over the New Zealand business, I wanted exactly that, the intervention or the opportunity to get help in small business that big business have every day. Because big business have HR departments, they have all these processes and structures in place for their teams, but small business have everything on 1 or 2 people. They don't have HR departments. They don't have resources to be able to lean in, or expertise to be able to lean on. So I wanted to democratize that, and pretty proud of being able to get XAP, which is this Xero assistance program, for all of our customers, their staff, and the staff's whānau, because I wanted to be able to get counselling support into the hands of the teenagers in small business New Zealand as well. Because I also know that small business owners work ridiculous hours. They miss some of the school events. They sacrifice a lot to be able to put food on the table for their whānau, and also take the responsibility of looking after their staff a lot as well. So we've now got close to 1 million, or just over 1 million New Zealanders that are part of that program, that are our customers. And then just recently, on the back of what we saw in our insights, which showed that there was close to 20% revenue drop in Tamaki last month, that shit's getting real here. 90 odd days, we need to do something. So we decided that we'll extend not only just to our own customers, but to every business owner in Tāmaki, regardless of whether you're a customer of Xero or not. So the full 200,000 businesses that are in Auckland have got access to that now as well. I can't change the environment. I can't change the fact that we're in lockdown. I can't change the fact that there's no revenue coming in, but what I can put in place is something that might be able to help you focus on the shit that you can control. And because the things that are out of your control, if you focus on that too much right now, you're just going to go down a massive hole that's going to poison so much else that you could be doing for good for yourself, for your whānau, and for your business. So that's the premise of why we put it in place. And I believe, like I was in that pace last lockdown, where everything was so new coming at us. We were at board meetings every second day, reforecasting, trying to figure out what the hell was going on, seeing what was happening in Asia, the US, UK, then Australia, and then us. Like, how do we cope with the stuff that's coming at us? And if you start focusing on the things that are completely out of your control, it's just an energy suck and a major time waste. So if we're able to put something in place where we can help people get control, and also realize that there's a lot of relationship and life stress at the same time going right now. So pretty excited. We're seeing people emailing in, because it's super easy. They just have to email XAP, XAP at Xero.com, to be able to identify that they're a business owner, and then we give them a code and they get access through Benestar, which is a world-leading EAP provider that we pay for on behalf of the small business owner. So I know it's tough. I know majority say, well, I just need some revenue to come in the door, but at the moment, all that shit's out of our control unless you've been able to pivot to doing things online. So that's the background of why we care so much about wellbeing. It's a little bit of my story, a little bit of me, but I've ingrained it into Xero, so it is now a Xero thing. We think we have the right now, with 480,000 subscriptions here in New Zealand, to be able to be a bit of a voice for small business and advocate on behalf of many, as more big businesses we think should as well. So happy to take questions on anything later on, but I think I'll leave it there, Vaughan. You're on mute, bro.
Not a bad thing, Bree.
It's Poari did that. You do that all the time, bro. You put me on mute. But I really appreciate you sharing your story of how you arrived at where you were here, and how that intervention story in terms of McFalls and Tauranga having parents down at Mount Maunganui, know the business well. And but that there are some really great stories, and often it's act of God where something just comes in and changes the direction of our journey. I think that from a small business perspective, and Xero is in a unique situation that you've got a massive database, you've got a high profile, you've got a product that actually small businesses need, and you're the next best thing. Because one of the issues that we have, and this is only my opinion with government, is that a lot of the advice that they receive and a lot of the views that they have, they are just too friggin' far from the coalface to smell the sweat. But you're the next step close, because what you see is real. You're seeing the numbers, and you can see where things are going south. I work with one of Auckland's biggest landlords, who's right here in Parnell, and the stories he's telling me over this lockdown: 850 retail tenancies through K Road, Ponsonby, Parnell. So you can kind of guess who it is. 76 handed their keys back. Right. 2 suicides in there. So this time round, it's a much different kettle of fish, and that's why I made the reference to the war. It is very much a siege mentality. But the interesting thing is that a business is just a business, right? We can get up and go again, and that's why this sort of bonding stuff that happens. Any of us, and I've certainly been there twice, where you've lost everything and you've had to come back and you build back, and it happens, even though it doesn't feel like that on the day, and that's where the resilience of the small, mark my words, small business will lead our economy. We're like weeds. We will come up through the cracks. We'll figure out a way. We're never short of ideas, but sometimes we need to be told that. And so I think hearing what you just said, Craig, reassures me that it's not actually that difficult. But one question I just want to ask you before we flip over to Poari: you've got your Xero Assistance Program, which is awesome. Been through, tried it out. Why is, with the $60 million minus 10 that's gone to the chambers for their mental health helpline. Why is the government not pumping that harder with the size of your database? Because it's the fastest route to the coalface, that I would say, and the easiest off-the-shelf, low-cost solution that they could use that could be out there tomorrow. Because the 50 million that they're looking to put into their community doesn't go live till December 1 because MB's in the way. You know, so that's a loaded question from my behalf, but that's all I would be saying is that it's a no-brainer, right?
So you're breaking up that whole time, bro. I've got no idea what you're talking about.
I take that as a yes.
Yeah. There's a little bit of frustration in there, but we got to the point where, well, we'll just take it into our own control and we'll do it ourselves. And I'd like it to be able to go further and to be able to get into the whānau of Small Business New Zealand as well, in Auckland and Tamaki particularly, and then Waikato at the time, but we can't bankroll that because it's purely the size. So time will tell, but yeah, I think there could be an opportunity to be doing more for them. Absolutely.
All right, well, we'll flip over to Te Wāori, but I think the thing that we'll leave it with is I'm pretty sure that you would have unanimous support across the advisory, not just HTK, but in general, of driving that product. So I think maybe, you know, everybody needs to talk because, you know, the answer is right there on the shelf to get going. So, hey, Te Wāori, Craig said his bit. I'm really keen to hear yours. A completely different field, both elite athletes, both come from different places with journeys of your own. So yeah, go hard, bro. Let it all out. Open the kimono.
Beautiful. What an odd introduction, but I'll try and be worthy of that oddness. I just want to come here to kia koe, Craig. Mo tō mahi rangatira, ia po. I have to say that, you know, while I want to talk, I'm also really keen to yield as much time to Craig as is possible so people can field questions. Just a couple of reflections, if I can, Craig. One of the things which really struck me, there's a couple of things, a couple of key moments for me that really resonated with me. As Vaughan said, I've got a sporting background. I am, you know, very accomplished in the field of tiddlywinks, and have worked hard to become so. But I too was struck down with a thumbnail, and I was not able to reach my full potential in that field. But I've managed to continue on. But what I want to say on the serious note is it's really wonderful to see a man, especially coming from a field like rugby, like league, you know, all those sports that we kind of grow up on, who is willing to be able to demonstrate and role model vulnerability. I think it's all too rare. I think that what is really cool about it is that it's pragmatic, it's on the street, it's immediately applicable, and it's a realistic approach. For me, I think it's just fantastic. I think also, you know, you were talking about that almost the come to Jesus moment was having that one person who believed in you. And I think that that's really important. Having that person or those people who recognize something in you and that you can lean on, you can borrow their belief in you when you don't have that belief for yourself. I think that's really impressive. I loved how you incorporate your whānau too, because, you know, we work very hard to craft a really wonderful facade, and that the people who are closest to us, I mean, everyone on the Poari knows, you know, we've all got we've got really amazing stories where we've fallen down and gotten up and fallen down and gotten up. I think that is really key. I think that when you were talking about, so I've made a couple of notes, I just want to touch on that again. Having that one person who says, hey, there's something in you. There's something that you don't see is so important, and it's so important to be that person when you're able to as well. It's so important to those small things that mean nothing to us can mean the world and can be the change in someone's life for the positive. You know, Vaughan, when you're talking about the suicide statistics and what's been happening just over the lockdown, it's just been incredible. It's been a tragedy. But I think what you're talking about, Craig, is a way of attacking it in a way that is open, that is honest, that is immediately pragmatic and immediately effective. So I really want to mihi to you for that. Also, you know, you're talking about how many people do we know personally in family or in business that have sacrificed their own children on the altar of their own kind of drive to create this incredible facade so you can, I've said this a few times, so you can buy things you don't need to impress people you don't like with money you genuinely don't have. So it's this continually fueling of this facade that we pump gas into. For me, Craig, if I can, I don't want to go on too much. I really want to give people an opportunity to direct questions your way, because I think it's a really important kōrero. But I'd like to ask one, if I may. What was the moment where, for your whānau, and if it's too personal, please don't feel any pressure. What was the moment of realization for you in terms of where your personal life was at, and how that was impacting, your professional life was impacting upon your personal life, and what was that process like? What was that realization like for you? Kia ora.
Kia ora, there's a couple of things I want to jump in that you talked around. I'll come back to one of them, I think, a little bit later on. But to answer your question specifically, it's so every day, I think in business, we get asked to compromise on our values every day. And before too long, if you're not strong enough, you realize in 6 months' time, you're in a completely different road to where you think is okay, but you don't know how to go backwards, and you can't figure that out, and you're this different person. Like you say, you get into that. I'm known for doing this thing. I just got to keep doing it. The expectations of others is that I do this, and you kind of, when I was in that weak state, I just carried on trucking. But I think the realization was effectively that my wife was going to leave, and that was the slap that, okay, I need to.
Wow.
I'll go and talk to my doctor. Dragged to talk to my doctor to get first medication to be able to keep me at that mellow state where I can start then getting better. Because medication definitely played a part in my journey of being able to lean into the process, even though I was on medication for probably 2.5 years. Tried to go off cold turkey a couple of times. Don't do that shit, because it's bad. It backfires big time on you. But ultimately, because of the work that I was going through personally, I was able to get out of it. But it was definitely that realization that shit, life's going to be very different if I don't sort myself out.
Wow. Hey, Craig, you reminded me, Twari, when you were mentioning that, back to Craig, there was another thing you said about intervention, and that was being introduced to one of the best clinical psychologists in Tauranga. I have to share this story because that was absolutely a mic drop moment there. When I sold our family business in 2017, it was sold because my wife did leave me. So the slap I got in the face, I didn't read it that well. But everything turned out well. This business was sold well. But the point was I was at rock bottom, because everything that I had changed, and hence base over apex. You were just kind of like, you had to start again. I was lucky to get introduced to who I think is probably the best clinical psychologist on the planet. And he lives here in Parnell, and awesome guy, does a lot of work with the government. But the key point is, you just mentioned values, and this is the truth. And so I'm probably opening up a bit here. It was about the third or fourth time he met me. I went out to his villa in Greenlane. He said, what would you consider your values? And I'd never been asked that question before, because I'd got by most of my life not needing to even lean on them or whatever. Everything had just gone so well. And so I made shit up, like trust and honesty and stuff like that. And the session finished after an hour, jump in my truck, drive back here to my apartment. And on the way back, I felt stink about making them up, because I thought, surely it must be more than that. So I started Googling what the fuck are values and what are these things, and really felt bad about it. Went back to him the next Tuesday and said, dude, I lied to you about the values. I just made that stuff up. And he just looked at me and said, yeah, I know. But he said, so what are they? And I said, well, I'm going to need to take time to think about that. And that began the journey in terms of searching for the values and finding those. I just couldn't pull them off the shelf. So when you said that, that took me right back to mid 2017, and having a guy that was qualified to ask the right questions and put me on the spot. And then things began. And look, I see Malcolm every week. Well, not during lockdown, but he comes up to my apartment here in Parnell. We have a coffee, and it's a relationship that will go on forever, because you just need an oracle like that in your life. And I'm lucky, I guess, that I have a medical health insurance policy that allows that to be. I know for a lot of people that's not realistic. So yeah, that was a bit of a trigger moment there, bro.
Yeah, awesome. And the next thing, I'll just come back to what Tuari was talking around before, around that one person to believe in you. A couple of my larger kōreros that I do on stage, I kind of ask people to think back of that one person that believed in them. So did you have a teacher that really saw something in you and you actually excelled in that class when you struggle in others? Or was it an uncle or an auntie or someone along your journey that actually really believed in you? And then you transport that into business. As leaders, why the frick are we not doing that every day to find the excellence in every one of the people that reports to us? Because they all have a superpower. They all do. We got to find it, and it's on us as a leader to be able to do that and lean in and be the champion of that individual, because they don't know what they're capable of yet, majority of the time. So just think about that. Think about leaning into understanding your people more so that you can get more out of them, and they'll get wings. I've seen it many times on my journey, and would love to see more leaders do that.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, Craig. But you mentioned before about small businesses flying by the seat of their pants. They don't have an HR policy or a health and safety policy, everything, and they just weave it all together, and somehow it works. And then there's that component, and then people like myself have come out of corporate, and it's do the numbers or die. So when performance isn't happening and the numbers come through and it's not in your DNA to give a shit about that, how we're saying this now, I agree. But as a way of thinking that actually needs a hell of a lot of work. It's not the norm. No, it's
definitely bro, it's totally not the norm, and I wouldn't be this enigma that's on an island if it was the norm, to be honest. But it's if the numbers aren't right, how do you deal with that? Is it dealing with that harsh, or you sit them down and go, Tidy, your numbers are a bit off. Are you okay, bro? What's up?
I think it's
or are you dealing with it in a hard, with fear? Your numbers are off. You're not going to get paid this month. I'm going to put you on PIP in 2 months if you don't sort your shit out. Like there's two totally different ways of being able to deal with it.
I think that when it comes to those sort of things, for me, having sort of worked, had experience of, working in government agencies and so on and so forth, you see a lot of people who've worked in those sort of areas, and I've seen a lot of small businesses that have the same thing, where people arrive at work and their main focus of the day is, whose fault is it today? How do I not get blamed for something today? The idea that I can say, actually, I screwed that up. I didn't get those numbers right. Can you help me? The ability to actually say, I'm actually really struggling. Because especially as Māori men, as men in general, we're brought up to believe that we need to be 10 foot tall and bulletproof, and a lot of us pump as much air into that as possible. The thing which is really helpful and the thing which is really hopeful with the message that you're creating, Craig, is the idea that going against that good old Kiwi bloke thing, we can actually say, I'm struggling. I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling scared. I'm feeling confused. I'm feeling unsure of myself, all of those things. And I think it also comes down to the kind of culture that you create within the company. Now, I'm not sort of one of those people who believes it's this kind of crazy sort of undisciplined free-for-all, everyone gets a trophy for turning up. I think that it has to be competitive. I think it has to be disciplined. But I also think there has to be a realistic. I mean, when I've worked in certain places and gone and done bits and pieces, you have that incoming interview, right, where they sit down and they talk to you and they tell you all these values, and that is the last time you hear those values, as you were saying, Paul. And they exist for the period of that wonderful talk. They've ticked the box. They've told you about the treaty. They've talked to you about where the toilets are. Not to photocopy your bum and all that sort of stuff. Like all that sort of basic stuff. But what tends to happen is we get away from what's really important. And I think that it's really important that more people embrace the message that you're putting out there, Craig, and can show vulnerability and see that as strength. When you were talking about, those people who are really important, for me, I guess that would be my grandmother. My grandmother was someone who believed in me right from the beginning. When I was a kid, I believed that there was something that I was supposed to do, and I believed that I had a purpose and there was, something given to me to do. And I don't mean that in the biblical sense. I'm not going to be standing up on a mountain anywhere receiving commandments or anything, not this week. But I mean, we all have something important, and what happens is we lose sight of that. When you find a leader, management and leadership are two different things. We see managers left, right, and centre. What I require, I remember almost on bended knee when I was working with this particular organisation, saying, "Lead me, please lead me," because leadership is service. and you don't lose anything by being a servant to the people that you're working with, you know. And I think that's a really important message, and it has to be pragmatic, and it has to be something which, you know, we keep reiterating. It's awesome.
Yeah.
And it's got to be easy. To your point, Vaughan, like the small business have got so many different priorities on their table, and they're putting fires out, trying to scrape to get the dollars in, servicing clients, and it's this never-ending rat race of trying to keep up, right? So what we tried to do was, like, ZAP is the bottom of the cliff. How do we start dealing with something that's a couple of steps above the bottom of the cliff? And I just put the link into the check-in, which is effectively a humanization of leadership skills that I think are important, of just getting to know your people, like, first and foremost, to build, to your point, Tari, the sense of psychological safety, so you can put your hand up and say, hey, I stuffed up, or I'm not okay today. You're not going to do that if you don't trust the person you're talking to.
Yeah.
So that's fundamentally what we're trying to get to, is how do we upskill in the rising tide of all boats of leaders in small business New Zealand, so that they actually give a shit about it, and practically they know a couple of basic steps to be able to help, so that they can direct, because they don't need to be a counsellor. Like, that shit's for a professional, but they're able to say, yeah, you're going through a bit of stuff. How about you look over here? How about you go this way? I'm here for you. Talk to me and let me know how you're getting on, but I think you should go and have a look over here. So that's because, like you said, small business has so many other things going on. They don't need to be that person that deals with all the shit all the time either.
Yeah, and very much so with the current situation where, you know, there's no bank that's going to be looking for a small business to take on, you know, to loan money. They'll go after homes and residential because it's easy. So the excitement, I can remember 2012, you know, extending Avalon Audio. We put the family home on the line. So it was 1.3 million in Upland Road, and it was exciting. And all of a sudden we acquired another business, until it wasn't exciting because shit hit the fan. You know, 2015, 16, we had an issue with the reliability of our product. Warranties were getting paid out. And then all of a sudden you're lying in bed staring at the ceiling at night wondering, you know, what sort of embarrassment it's going to be to have to wrap and pack all this up, and then somehow you crawl your way out of it. So, you know, I'm a big believer in resilience, and I think one of the interesting things about this mess that we're in the moment, because in my mind, it's only my opinion, the Auckland lockdown's the biggest mistake our government has made. They've taken it too far, but it doesn't matter. 15th, we're out of here and we get the show back on the road, is that we will be back. And I think the benefit that you've got there at Xero is that in terms of the lack of cohesion that the small business community has, we're a bunch of fragmented all over there, different. You have this big database, you have this, so you're the closest thing is pulling a lot of people into one area, because that is our weakness, is our fragmentation. We're not very good as a cohesive community. But I'm going to flick. Max, I see you there looking very pensive, and I was really interested in when we were on before about people, and, you know, the bit about superpowers. And looking after people, because that's something I'm shit at. I'm hopeless at developing people, but I know that's an area that you have good. But so anyway, Max, over to you, bro.
Well, talking of superpowers, I mean, I'm in front of a whole lot of superpowers, and that's including you, Vaughan, Tuali, and but Craig, you're the man, and that's amazing. And what you've said today is touched my heart, I've got to say, and a lot, because there's a lot of suffering going on, and I deal with employment relations and difficulties of that, and certainly I see this every day. And I've had employers ring me, said they can't take it anymore. They're embarrassed to front their children. Now, a lot of this, the pandemic's to blame. Before that, though, the government imposed a lot of changes on small business and difficulties on small business. But even through the pandemic, they didn't show the empathy that we would have liked to have seen, and the support. And we feel as small business owners that we're being forgotten, totally forgotten, and including yourself. You know, we were, a few of us who are interested in the mental health side of it, we're very proud of what the work that you have done. And we talk about it behind your back. You know, we say, well done, man. Fantastic. And look, this money, if anyone can distribute it right, would be you. And we were so disappointed that you never got that money. And where it went to, well, let's not go there. But my question is this. You're a commercial organization, you're a big business, and you're at the top of the pile there. That's fantastic. But a lot of us are feeling, and just there, Vaughan's just picked up what just now is that we're fragmented a lot. It's like herding cats. We have different interests. And a few of us can share our stories, but we don't know the total picture. Whereas you do. You do. You can see the heart and the blood that runs through each business, and you can watch it. And 500 or 480,000 businesses, that's an incredible amount of knowledge. What some of us would like to do, Craig, is maybe set up one day, because this government's not treating us right. Even yesterday, the union put to the government that all the minimum wage should lift by 14%, because I think it's about time. Small businesses are just about to come out of lockdown completely broke. Christmas holidays are coming up where all the staff are going to be off on holiday and have to be paid. And this guy's, Richard Wagstaff, is saying that we need a 14% increase in the minimum wage as of today. That sort of thing's very depressing, and no wonder there's a lot of people suffering right now in small business. But what we want is a voice, and what we want, and Craig, we're not asking you for that, because I think you've got commercial values, and your values, I mean, you've got to protect what you've got. But what we do need is perhaps an independent body, maybe a political party or something like that. If we set it up, can we work closely for you, with you? You've got the information and perhaps can guide it to us. I don't think there's a lot of stuff that's their information, but it can be guarded in terms of individual business, so privacies are protected. But the overall picture would be very, very helpful.
Yeah, cool, Max. We provide to all the political parties today, I think it's 12 hours in advance, the small business insights that we put out. So aggregated data, anonymized data. So if you don't know, if you've never seen that before, then jump in and have a look. Xero Small Business Insights. So every month we put out key statistics across certain metrics, which are lead indicators, we think, to the performance of the small business economy. And that's where the realization that we need to do something, when we saw the numbers for was that August, for August was down close to 20% in Auckland in revenue, which is, that's on average, so there's a shitload that are worse than that. So we provide that, and we don't just go to Labor, of course, or whoever's in power. It goes to everybody, and we try and make sure that we do that. It's just depending on who receives it, whether they do anything with it, and whether the people that are there that get it understand small business. And I think that's maybe a little bit of the issue.
Yeah.
Very much, and that's what we're concerned about. A lot of us are critical of the parties who at election time want 500,000 votes from small business, but the rest of the time they just ignore us, and we're just because we don't annoy them. We haven't got a professional lobby to go and knock on their door every 5 minutes asking, for favors, or taking them out for lunch every day. We haven't got that, and maybe that's where we'd like to probably do that. But look, Craig, that's very good. Small business insights. I think we will certainly be looking that up and following it through. And if not, we could, if it does happen, we might get some people that are keen to do this. Would like to come and knock on your door and have a talk to you if that's possible.
Happy to have a chat when you're ready, Max.
Kia ora, Max. Thanks for that, bro.
So, Max,
Uncle Pete,
Max.
you're fizzing at the... Sorry, who was that? Sorry, Uncle Pete, you're fizzing at the bung, bro?
So that was too early.
No,
Go to
Pete.
Artie first, mate. To Artie first.
Okay, that's so kind of you, bro.
Mate, I've talked too much. Go, brother. Go, please, Peter.
No, I was just wanted to resonate on some of the things that you said, and I think you're right. There's so many people that are managers that don't know how to lead, and I think that is a problem that's evident in probably work life and home life. I find personally that you get to a situation like in my rugby club, and everyone's got an idea, but no one wants to lead it, and sometimes you've got to step up and do those things. We talk about people, and I sort of talk about people when I talk about crossroads. And I think throughout our careers, there's crossroads, and it's about making a choice. And sometimes the hardest thing for people to do is make a choice. But I believe that not making a choice is the worst thing you can do for yourself personally. You've got to make a choice, and when you make your choice, don't worry if it's the wrong choice. Just run with it. You can always change. You can always pivot. You can always reinvent. And I think what you're doing with XAP is just going to give people some of those tools to realize that it's not the end game where they're at now. It's just part of the journey. So, yeah. I mean, personally, you've obviously had a couple of crossroads and a couple of points that people have helped you. And like, do you think everyone has that same journey?
I think everyone goes through their own struggles, right? And there's varying levels of struggle, of course. Some are relatively privileged to get through without having major crisis to deal with. I've had a few. What I haven't talked about tonight is my acute mental distress, where I had a plan to end my life, and I was intervened right in the last minute before I was able to do it. So I haven't touched on that as one of another major crises in my path as well. So I think it's understanding that everyone has a story. That story, own that story. It doesn't define you. Mental health does not define me. It's just part of my story to where I am today. I think it's meant that I'm able to empathize a little bit more with what people go through in real life and be a little bit real. Realize that my story can add a little bit of power and voice to those that are not comfortable enough to do that today, but tomorrow they might. Hence the reason why I'm comfortable to talk about it. And if I can just help just one person, then maybe that person can help the next one, and the ripple effects will happen. So, but we need to acknowledge that everybody has a story, and not downplay their stories because we think ours is better than theirs.
It's interesting you say that, because I lived overseas in Thailand for 11 years, and they had a proverb, and it was basically along those lines where I have my story, but your story is not mine. And that's as simple as it is. I think it's just probably just reinforcing what you've said then. We all have a story, but the ability to listen to someone else's story all the way through, that's a real skill.
Yeah, and your difference between manager and leader is your ability to understand that your truth is not the person's truth that's sitting in front of you. We all have our own values and journey and the way that lens we look through at life. And I think at the moment anyway, I'm seeing a lot of divisiveness, a lot of frustration and anger in the system, where we're trying to shove our own truths down everybody's throats without actually taking a step back and understanding and being curious around who's in front of us and understand their truth, so that we can find a common ground. But the more we can do that in business, and that for me is leadership. That for me is a fundamental pillar for it.
And I have to chuck in there from a small business perspective. Our current government's not as bad at small business as people think. In fact, I owned a small business through 9 years of a national government, and this government has done far more for small business than ever happened in that 9 years. It's just that it's got tangled up in a whole of other stuff, and that's where and I think Max was probably trying to go there, that 3-wire bridge that exists between Nash's 4th floor office in Wellington and what's actually happening out here, where you can smell the sweat, which is actually where it matters, is a very discombobulated line. And so that's the bit where the frustration pents up. And kind of, it's almost a formula of how the hell do you navigate the 2,000 bureaucrats between you and where the decisions can be made. But that aside, I'm an optimist, and I believe that the small business community will bounce back incredibly well after this. We'll surprise ourselves. It's just
I have no doubt.
Right now.
I have no doubt. But no doubt at all. Like, small business economy is immune to international shocks. They deal in neighborhoods, they deal in communities, they don't deal in international trade. So communities are still here. The demand to be able to service each other is still here. So the small business will bounce just as well as what it did last lockdown, when we saw a 40% drop in revenue, but it was a V recovery. Boom, straight back in small business. And small business held the New Zealand economy for 3.5 months because the big business just wasn't able to operate. So we'll see that again. It's going to be slower this time though, because of the drip feeding of the changes and the freeing up to be able to get back to a decent amount of operation cadence. But I have no doubt that they'll bounce if they can survive and get through, and their resilience bucket is enough to be able to carry on. Because some might get through and go, I'm out, like I'm come back after Christmas and I'll go and get a wage somewhere else because the shit's too hard. So I'm hoping that we're able to help get them through.
Yeah, I guess you will see the numbers better than most, Craig, but I think that what I feel, because we have a lot of retail clients in our database, and a lot of them are doing very well digitally, but this quarter that we're just coming to the end of now is a very rich quarter cash flow wise that allows you to carry through. The first quarter next year was often quite lean, particularly February and March, and I think then for the Auckland economy being locked down, I think that'll show up next year. But you know,
yeah, Vaughan, I've got a massive flashing red light for me around that. And if I can talk to that just for a couple of seconds around where my fears are. So we don't have foot traffic at the moment for a lot of central Auckland or even regional Auckland at the moment to be able to get into retail shops to be able to impulse buy. We have supply chain issues. So even if there's stuff on the shelves today, there might not be tomorrow. And those that are wanting to get things on the shelf, they're having to air freight it from Australia because the boats aren't coming because it's too expensive to come. So then they're having margin squeeze to be able to supply for Christmas. And then we roll into the Christmas period where everything bugs off. And then we don't have a full month until April.
Yeah.
Right? So that is the first time that we actually have a full cadence of month without holidays or long weekends or anything across the entire country. So if you don't make hay now and lead up to Christmas, then small business in a whole world of pain, because we already know that cyclical wise, payment times stretch out over until January, February, because they send an invoice for the work that the mihi that they do in December. Nobody's there to get it. And then it gets put off, and it doesn't get paid until the end of February. So there is a whole lot of pain coming into the system if we don't get this injection of pent-up lockdown demand to come out and spend like crazy, like we saw last time. But fingers crossed that does happen. But I do have this flashing red light of what we're seeing.
I think that's an accurate red light. I mean, number one, the logistics global supply chain is just constipated. It's stuck, right? So if you're going to air freight, well, then you're paying huge for your air freight. But the other side of it is the inflationary pressure. Just simple stuff like the cafe below my apartment here in Parnell. You know, their coffee prices have gone up 17% in the last month, and they'll probably keep going up because those freight costs of getting it in. They haven't just bring in a pallet of coffee at a time instead of a 20-foot container. So that sort of stuff, that's just one example where we, the consumer, are going to have to wear that. And if there's one thing small businesses are awful at, putting their prices up. And someone said, I think it was Max. Yeah, Max said before about wage. I don't actually have a problem with wages going up. I actually think we have to pay people more and we have to pay more. The consumer has to understand it's just going to cost more to live in this paradise. You know? I'm going to just whip around the room because I can see someone I'm going to throw a question at, but is there anybody else that wants to tuck something in at Tuari and Craig before we head on to the home stretch? All right, no pressure. But I saw a comment that you made, Peter, and it was in terms of Craig's kōrero. So have you got a question you'd like to flick at these guys that you know, raise the bar, bro, put some pressure on?
Point. But I did have the opportunity to obviously meet you, Craig. I think it was at the WE Summit a couple of years ago. And it was an outstanding whakaaro in regards to me listening to your journey in regards to what you've been through and so forth. And yeah, I mean, some of my clients that I've had on my books, some are in the retail sector as well. And you touched on the fact in regards to having that big, massive red light, pretty much overseeing that particular industry. I feel for them a lot. Some of them are not only just business and clients and so forth, but they're also friends, and some of them are family. So that rings true to what I'm experiencing at this point in time and what they're experiencing as well. So ngā mihi nui kia koe e hoa, especially in regards to your journey and also your life journey. You know, being in this particular industry and being a small business owner as well myself, yeah, the struggle is absolutely real, especially in the media game, in the media industry in regards to where I sit. I've had probably about between 5 to 8 clients that have pretty much gone downwards and pretty much got out of the business and gone their own way. So I've also had to pivot myself, and that's probably something that I'm going to probably be doing over the next however long it's going to take. So I do appreciate the fact of actually putting me on the spot there, Warnie.
No pressure,
but thank you very much. And also on top of that, the fact in regards to what HTK is also doing as well. So tēnā rawa te koe hoa.
Yeah, kia ora, brother. Yeah, cool. The yeah, hey, Tuari, I want to come back to you, bro. And just in terms of, because I think this feeling vulnerable part, and Craig sort of put something on the table there before, but I think one of the things that, you know, we in the small business community are terrible about, and I talked about it, about us being a fragmented community. And, you know, I know it's only a small group in here tonight, but this is the sort of thing that we have to encourage. And I think that with the use of, like, you know, the bigger horsepower platforms like, you know, the Xero AP performance. But I think here, from your perspective tonight, has this been a bit of an eye-opener for you, for the small business community? Because it actually has for me, you know, because I've had a couple of moments where I go, fuck, I was that guy. You know, for example, you know, when Craig said something about the slap in the face, and I remember I didn't feel that slap in the face. And, you know, it'd be a surprise to all of you in the room here tonight. But, you know, when I owned my small business, I was a real asshole. And then people who met me today go, you're a different guy, completely. You're just a completely different guy. But the truth is, you know, all joking aside, is you look back and you go, yeah, that small business, that pressure, and those moments, and they were dark. You know, they were really dark. But, you know, you want to have a crack on your own. So, you know, a bit of a mumbled question, but really, I guess my point is those dark moments, you know, where that you kind of just got to get up off that concrete floor, you know, and get going again.
Yeah, no, awesome, Vaughan. I think that, you know, just talking, Peter was talking about having to pivot, and what Craig's talked about tonight. I think the question that anyone who's listening and anyone who's watching this is, what is the conversation that you need to have? What is the hand that you need to raise? What is the thing that you haven't been saying that you've been too frightened to say that you need to say? Because, you know, this is not a game of numbers and money. It's a game of life and death for a lot of these people. We often talk about, you know, whai te kahurangi me katoa hukue he mai ngā teitei, which is that whole thing about if in life you yield, let it be to a lofty mountain. The thing is that there is always a way over the mountain, but at the moment, because of the competitiveness that we have, you know, as business people, we are vying, we're in this competitive place. But and to what Max said before, we don't need voices, we need a choir. We need to get together with people like Craig, with people like Peter, you know, people who are out there actually doing it on the cold face, and we need to be a choir. And we need to be able to, maybe we can't add much, but we need to actually put ourselves out there in a way and say, I don't know what it is that I can add, but I'm here and I see you. Because we're so busy not being seen, hiding in plain sight. You know, when you shared about your own journey, your own mental health journey, Craig, I mean, just that moment of being able to share that is hugely powerful. So what do? Well, what we do is we're accountable in our own whānau. We're accountable in our own community. That person in the office that we haven't been talking to, or that person that's been struggling that we haven't gone over to see because we just go, should I actually have got no time for it? We actually take the time. We make the time. We be the change we want to see. Maybe there's no money in it. Maybe there's no advantage in it. And maybe we need to create a wahi tapu. Our people are always good at creating wahi tapu, those sacred spaces where we could come together and we can actually talk things through, where we could find that place where we had the ability to speak straightly, cleanly to each other. In Samoan, they call it leva. Leva is that sacred space that exists between a father, a son, a mother, a daughter, a husband, a wife. You know, you get the idea. So how do we create these spaces? I would say that what Craig's advocating is that we're creating these sacred spaces. We need to look at the mātauranga of our old people, those things which we feel in our gut, and we need to trust our gut on a daily basis. Be accountable, and wherever you are and however you're speaking, make that phone call, send that text. Don't sit there and go, I don't want to be a pain in the ass. I don't want to bother people, because you're not. I mean, Craig talked about it. I mean, we wouldn't be having this conversation if Craig wasn't supposed to be here and Craig wasn't interrupted from taking a course of action that you could never reverse. So for me, it's been an incredibly eye-opening experience. I've really enjoyed hearing from Craig. I definitely want to get to Orewa and come and have a coffee, bro, and have a few coffees actually. I've been hugely impressed by your kōrero, and I know for me, mate, I'll say this, bro, I don't know what I have to offer, but I'm in. I'm in. You know, I'm in. I'm in your choir, bro. I know Vaughan's a beautiful soprano, and Pete, my gosh, that bass, mate. And Max, Max has got that voice. He can just be the orator, mate. So no,
Yeah,
awesome,
and
awesome.
So Tuari, awesome, bro. That answer was exponentially better than the question that I gave you. So thanks for that, bro. But my key point and where you took that and why I'm happy about it is that the kōrero that and is healing, the talk that is going on, that goes on amongst us, and that's that we're a long way from, and it's not about the government to make it right for us. We're running our own show here. So but we want that relationship. It's like a treaty partnership, right? We want this to work, but the reality is it's on us. It's absolutely on us, and that's how this chemistry works. And I think that
we'll honour this treaty.
So, but yeah, and that's what I love about us Māori. Our humour is as black as, bro. That's spot on. Yeah. So thanks for that, man, because you opened up another thing about sort of keeping that warmth, the hearing the mother's voice, the father's voice, and that's in terms of the small business community. And you touched on it, Craig, with superpowers and stuff like that. It's that let's keep talking to each other, winking at each other, because we're going to come out the other side of this. We can handle it. And it's all good. Well, we're getting towards wrapping up here tonight, but one thing I need to do is just basically work the room and see if there's anybody else that's got a scud missile they want to shoot at either at you two before you even get out of here alive. So I'm going to count that down. Oh, here we go. Hand up over there. Sorry, you've only got a little thumbnail, and I'm 59 years old. I can't. You're blurry. Go. Just need your microphone off. Cool. You're right. You just need to turn your microphone on. Yep, got it.
Hello, kia ora. My name is Marina. It's very interesting. It has been very interesting to listen to you. I'm originally from Italy, and we have a different culture. We talk a lot about our problems, what's going on. We go on for hours. But in this country, things are very different. So it's very good to notice then that some Kiwi men are, I would say, open enough and intelligent enough to understand that sometimes you need to talk, you need to ask for help, because otherwise there is no way out. I can just give you an example. A few weeks ago, I've got pakihi friends, Maori friends, and I was complaining a lot about something. And this friend of mine, she told me, Marina, stop complaining, just shut up. You don't have to complain all the time because things don't go your way. We are not like that. Just put up with it, keep it to yourself. And then I said, okay, I will not bother you anymore with my problems. But then I thought, well, maybe there is a reason why in this country there are so many suicides and so many problems with mental health. People don't talk.
Yep.
And I think it's great that the gentlemen like you start opening up and understand that it's not a question of being weak. It's a question of being strong, saying, I need help. So good on you. I'm very impressed after being told, Marina, shut up, keep things to yourself. So it's good to talk about these things because you can find a solution. You can have people who are helping you, like in your case, Craig, people who recognize that you got some quality and you have to get it out, because if you keep it inside, it's going to kill you.
Wow.
So it was very positive. Thank you very much. Things are changing.
Awesome.
And it was lovely to meet you, and it was very interesting. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, you're bang on there, and I think what you said about Kiwi men opening up, one of the attractions to HTK, which I think is a very unique business in New Zealand with its intense focus on Māori small businesses, some of the beautiful things that you get to see, like as businesses, like for example, Vern can vouch for this. We have like a hard out Māori business, 8:30 tomorrow morning. If you want to, you just tune in, karakia every morning, and then you're off and do your thing. And it's just some of those little things that you see in terms of that connection and that warmth and that chemistry, the true wairua. It only exists. Well, I shouldn't say that it's arrogant. It's not that it only exists, but when you see it, it's an awesome thing. But I'm going to wrap the evening up. So unless anyone else has got a question and got it up, we'll slip on out of here on a Wednesday night. So I'm going to finish off with our karakia, and then we'll head back to our whānau. Okay, so we'll rip into it now. Okay. Kia tau, kia tātou katoa, te atawhai o te tātou ariki e karaiti me te araha o te atua me te whewhenga tahitanga ki te wairua tapu, ake, āmene. Kia ora, crew.
Craig, you're the man. You're literally the man.
Cheers,
Kia
Craig.
ora. Thank you.
Yeah, bro.
Appreciate the time.
No, kia ora, brother.
Awesome, really appreciate it.
Stay in contact, eh?
Mihi, bro.
Cheers, brother. Thank you.
Kia ora.